Welcome to another Founder Wisdom podcast. We have Samantha Phillips with us today. She is co-founder at Dynelectro and also Chief Energy Transition Officer. We're gonna talk about what that means. She's worked at a bunch of companies related to energy before. She's into Power 2X. She's into engineering, innovation, stakeholder engagement, collaboration. She's also a speaker and a board member. So lots of things. And these ex energy companies include Marx and Shell, amongst others. This podcast is brought to you by podpire.com. If you want to start a podcast, you want to scale a podcast, monetize it, go to podpire.com. We have an ebook and a masterclass for you to follow to learn about podcasting. Sam, welcome to the podcast. Tell me a
Thanks
bit
very
more
much.
about yourself and what you're up to nowadays.
Yeah, great. I live in Denmark at the moment. So I grew up in Canada. My dad was a mining engineer. So I grew up in every single small mining town that you can imagine in Canada. Then when I finished engineering school, I moved to Europe and I was in Europe for a while. I was in Australia for a while, in the Middle East for a while, and now I'm back to Denmark. So that's the short.
And yeah, the connections is a bit laggy, but tell me, why did you decided to start your own company? That's always the question I'd like asking because you were employed by all these big energy company, big oil, right?
Yeah,
And getting like nice salaries and stuff. Why did you
yeah,
move on your own?
yeah. That's an obvious question and a good one. Um, the long answer to that is, yeah, I started out in as kind of what I would call the family business. So lots of small mining towns. So I was working for my dad's mines, and I always say I'm the son he didn't have. I was the oldest child. So I'm kind of used to what I would call like small startup scale organizations because we're always not so many people working in the local mining towns. Then, as you noticed, I joined Shell when I finished university, and Shell is one of the top places to work as a new graduate. The quality of the training, the opportunities are literally unparalleled. And so I spent 20 years of my career for large organizations. And then, as you know, most recently, so 4 and a bit years now with a small startup. And the transition for me was combination of things. COVID came, so all of our projects when I was working in the Middle East were canceled and put on hold. And so I had the chance to either come back or to be repatriated out of Dubai. So that meant either Canada, England, because I was born in the UK, or Denmark. I had Danish children. So because of Denmark's, say, progressive policies on energy, we've been transitioning into wind energy for 3 decades now, maybe more. It was an obvious choice because there's a lot of, say, progressive energy policies. Having 2 Danish children also made it an obvious choice for me. And I kind of stumbled into the founder of the company. He's basically, his wife's a school teacher, and one of my best friends is a school teacher. And I met over, a birthday lunch in the summertime. And Camilla's like, oh, my husband could really use your kind of skills, except he has no money because he's an academic working for his own company at the time. He was still a university professor part-time. And I'm like, that's okay. I didn't want to work full-time. And yeah, as soon as we met, we kind of hit it off. And with my corporate lens and my, say, global background and exposure, I know what good corporate things look like. So once I saw the R&D level work that he was doing, I knew that it was high-end type research and it had commercial applications. So I still remember when I saw the microscope images that I decided that, okay, this is really cool innovation. And it was really easy to help because I just had the corporate vocabulary. And I could understand it from a large corporation side of things. How do you sell innovation from, a two-person firm who are working out of a converted pig farm in the countryside in Denmark? How do you showcase the actual raw talent and potential of the technology when the academic, say, profile and lens is very different than, say, mine, which is very heavily corporate. So that was a long way around saying, through a friend of a friend, that I kind of had the opportunity to join as co-founder. And how I made I don't know, how'd you say it, sometimes seems illogical leap from corporation and heavy governance and processes in place to an organization where you're relying on people doing the right thing to get things done, where you don't have the corporate processes in place.
Right. And what do you guys do precisely at Dynelectro? You previously raised 2.4 million for them. Tell us about the business model and why it's so interesting.
Yeah. Yeah. So the shortest answer I can give you is we work within power to X. So we take power from a renewable source and water, and then we break the water apart and we get hydrogen and oxygen. And hydrogen is a core building block to pretty much, let's say, everything, but a huge percentage of our industrial practices, and certainly the fuels that we use have hydrogen as a main energy component to it. So we make, say, low carbon or low emission hydrogen. So.
And to who do you resell that to? What's your business model there?
Yeah, so basically we make the equipment, we make electrolyzers that's where the electrons kind of get split out into the hydrogen, oxygen. And then it'll be, say, large industries like, steel plants, cement, certainly refineries, any developers that are making, say, sustainable aviation fuels, or you might have e-methane or e-methanol, any of the, say, what they're now calling, say, either alternative fuels or, say, non-fossil fuel based fuels. Those are going to be your consumers. Those would be the ones that we're selling our technology to. And so at the moment we're working on, say, projects where you take a biogas plant. So basically you take, leftover bits of cornfields and leftover, anything that's biodegradable. And then they capture the natural gas. It's the biogas, which is half natural gas, which they can re-inject back into the gas grid, and then CO2. And basically we can convert that CO2. So you're adding hydrogen in to the CO2, and then you're getting more what's called e-methane. So you have your biomethane, and then you have your e-methane. And they're just low carbon fuels where you can just replace the methane anywhere you use natural gas in the existing natural gas networks. Does that make sense?
Right. Yes. And you sell the technology, right, which you have probably a patent on, and you sell the processes to teach these companies how to use them, right? Is that what you sell?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pricing on that, like,
close.
give us an idea of what
we have
the pricing
four
can
different.
be.
Yeah, what we're talking about. Yeah. So basically, your first question was, yes, we have 4 different patents. And at the moment, so there's something called the TRL. So it's technology readiness level. So you start at level 1 and you go up through to level 10, where 10 is fully commercial. And then 1 is like an idea. And then once you kind of get some patents and proof of concept, and then you do a small scale demonstration. So we're like at TRL 5/6. So we don't have a commercial product. The hydrogen market itself is still evolving and maturing. So at the moment, everything is, say, pre-commercial scale and size. In terms of pricing, you can expect roughly, if you're going to say, it's maybe a ballpark. If you want to make a 1 megawatt unit, you're looking at 2 million euros to build and install. And So that's kind of the scale you're looking at. And then, like, I think a typical biogas plant is kind of, say, in the 4 megawatt scale type of electrolyzer that you'd be looking at. And then the large power developments, they're in the tens and hundreds of megawatts, but we're still a step away from that level of technology, even at the piloting stage at the moment.
Right. And the megawatts, are we talking about the output or the input here? And like 1 megawatt, like in that fuel is city, like give us an idea of what 1 megawatt can do.
Yeah. So I'm trying to think if I have, don't know that I have that at my fingertips right now, but basically in terms of when we say 1 megawatt, that's a good question, can either be input or output. The type of technology that we work in is actually the most efficient. So there's maybe you have, say, 10% losses between your power input and the value you're getting out of output. Whereas some of the more traditional systems, if you're familiar with either alkaline electrolysis or PEM electrolysis, those are like the mainstream incumbent technologies that any of the commercial applications right now are using. And approximately half of the power coming in turns into heat rather than power, or rather than converted into hydrogen. So there's a lot of efficiencies to gain if you move, to the higher temperature electrolysis, where you're operating at 700 degrees rather than 70 degrees, and that's Celsius. So, and in terms of, I'm just trying to think, let's think, for example, like Denmark will use 5 gigawatts of power consumption electricity. So I'm trying to think what that is. So if you roughly say 5 gigawatts for, say, 5 million people, then that will give you a gigawatt per million. And then you want to go down an order of 3. So that's 100,000 roughly equivalent of a population. So say a small
Okay.
city is what that would be able to power.
On a daily basis, right? So that is quite interesting. What are your objectives for next year? Are you into raising money? What is your specific role for next year?
Yeah. So at the moment, just I guess last year now, we closed our seed funding round. So we'll be doing a Series A raise by, say, fall this year. And that's kind of where we're set up at the moment.
And your
So
role, is it
basically,
mostly fundraising
to
or
date, the
do you?
company's raised. So far, we've raised, yeah, my role is a little bit mixed. As co-founder, I take on and wear many hats. And it depends on what needs to be done. But at the moment, if you look at the amount of money that we've brought into the company, so we've brought in, say, 20 million euros to date, 50% of that has been with public funding. So all of the public funding projects, we write the applications, we are making sure there's a match between our technology and where the proposals for co-financing come in. So that's primarily where I'm working right now, is making sure we have the right partnerships, making sure that we have projects that we can actually deliver and execute on. So literally a little bit of everything is kind of what I do.
Right. And how's that different from what you were doing before? Like, is your founder experience way more intense right now? Like, how do you compare that via the corporate world you were into?
Yeah. I mean, in the corporate world, there's a very set timeline for things. That you just know, well, I guess also because I've been in the corporate world for 2 decades, there's just a certain natural rhythm to things. And as I said, you have procedures and software and tools kind of that are in place, and you have an entire organization and entire departments that are set around different functions. So in a startup, I mean, I'll do marketing, I'll do internal relations, I'll do external relations, I'll do budgeting, I will do invoicing, I will do business development, and answer the phones when people are calling in. So there's there's a lot of different things. There's a lot of different things that I get to do as in a co-founder role, whereas at least in my corporate roles, and probably most corporate roles, you have a very dedicated, specific function you come in with. I've always, say, been more broadly interested in how the business is run. So I'm always taking on, say, like special assignments within my, say, corporate life and role. So I kind of get the broadening that I find interesting when I'm in a more, say, niche and well-defined corporate role.
Right. And you've been all over the world. You've been in various companies. You have a pretty firm grasp on the international energy market. What trends are you seeing nowadays for the next 5 to 10 years? And tell me about the potential role of AI into this.
Good questions. So at the moment, in terms of the energy markets, what you'll see is a lot more volatility. So you'll see a lot more, say, price fluctuations. You'll see as countries are, say, meeting their 2050 or decarbonization targets, you're seeing more and more renewals being added globally. Well, when that happens, if you don't invest the same amount into your grid and your ability to distribute that electricity that you're generating, then you're going to have a disconnect. And then you're going to have, so like we have periods of time already within this year, within 2025, where we have negative energy pricing within Europe. So that means we have to pay to shut in the wind turbines because there's too much electricity being generated, and it's, the grid can't manage that much electricity. So these huge volatilities, where if you go back to, say, even maybe 2.5 weeks ago, we had one of the most expensive electricity hours, where it was, close to 1,200 euros per megawatt. And that ends up being ridiculously expensive when the normal pricing is, say, anywhere between, say, $50 and $70. So to kind of be at the, a full order of magnitude higher, that's just the kind of volatility you're seeing. So there'll be more renewables being built out. I believe you'll see a lot of, and you're starting to see it now, at least within the hydrogen space. You're getting a lot of new players coming in over the last, probably, say, 5 years. And you're starting to see that could be more consolidated. So you'll be seeing mergers and acquisitions from some of the larger players who are in that space. And you'll see some, say, collapsing and alignment on some of the different technologies that are in play. You'll certainly see more regional, say, decentralized solutions, where you'll have, so what makes sense in Denmark might not necessarily make the same amount of sense in Poland. So, or say within Europe versus the US. So you'll see more, say, regional energy produced and energy consumed. And that's quite relevant if you look at least, say, the instability in the Middle East and the conflict still in Russia and Ukraine. And what you'll see is energy security will be way higher on people's agenda. I mean, it was always a risk. It's just now that people have felt what that risk looks like. So energy security has always been something that we care about. It's just that volatility is making people acutely aware of what energy security means. So increased focus on energy security. There'll be much more volatility in the short term. When I say short term, the next 5 years, and you'll see more consolidation of the different players purchasing and merging with some of the smaller, say, niche technology groups.
Right. And the role of AI into this, you feel like we'd have AI
Yes,
systems to manage energy and redistribute energy bits?
yeah. You'll see. Well, that's a twofold question, because what's happening on both sides, both on the, say, demand side of the electricity required to run all of the different data centers, and the amount of electricity that is going to be demanded and consuming by some of these larger models that are, really ramping up the AI capabilities. So you'll see it on more demand on electricity. And you're also starting to see, now certainly when I was talking about the volatility, where you'll start to see more integration of the predictive models where AI can at least step in and, consolidate and incorporate massive amounts of data. So I think those are the areas that you'll see it is. So I think the traders will start more heavily relying on AI, and that will bring opportunities, at least hopefully, to the consumers who will, have maybe more options and better priced options.
Thanks for today, Sam. Where can people find out more about you and your company?
Yeah, so the company is Dynelectro, so it's DYNELECTRO.DK. Certainly on LinkedIn, and again, that's the same handle that we are on LinkedIn. And I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so feel free to connect with me there, ask any questions, and if I don't have the answers and when I mix up the units, I will certainly kind of get back to you and clarify any of those things.